When a Hollywood legend steps onto a late-night stage, you expect reverence. But what happens when the host aims for laughter and lands on disrespect instead? This was the night Sylvester Stallone faced more than questions. He faced a war of words. The show began like any other. Low lights, a buzzing crowd, the jazz band rapping its intro as Jimmy Kimmel took the stage with his trademark grin. "Tonight we have a very special guest," Jimmy announced. "The man who made mumbling an art form, Rocky himself, Sylvester Stallone." Applause thundered as Stallone emerged, his presence magnetic even after all these years. Dressed sharp in a black blazer and maroon shirt, he smiled politely and took his seat. "Good to be here," Stallone said, voice still gravel and grit. "Good to have you, Sly," Jimmy replied, leaning in. "I was told you'd bring wisdom, experience, a few unintelligible syllables, and maybe a protein shake." Laughter rippled through the audience. Stallone chuckled, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "Well, I left a protein shake backstage," he said. "Didn't want to outshine your green juice." Jimmy smirked. "Touché? So tell me, your new movie. Another action flick? Or did you finally make something with a plot?" Stallone stayed composed. "It's a story about redemption," he said. "A veteran confronting the ghosts of his past. Something that speaks to real pain. Deep," Jimmy said with mock awe. "And here I thought it was just another excuse to flex those biceps." The crowd tittered. Stallone didn't. "Sometimes pain needs muscle," he replied evenly. "Not to show off, but to carry the weight." The air cooled. Jimmy raised his brows. "Wow, poetic. Did Rambo teach you that, or was it Rocky?" Stallone leaned back. "Funny. I always thought comedy should punch up, not down." The audience stirred. Jimmy blinked, caught off guard. "Just having fun," he said quickly. "Don't want to get body slammed on live TV?" "Don't worry," Stallone said. "I only hit when it's scripted." The tension was electric now. What began as banter was turning into a duel. Jimmy tried steering it lighter. "Let's go back to the first Rocky. You wrote it in 3 days, right? Did you just run out of crayons?" A ripple of discomfort moved through the crowd. Stallone paused. "I wrote it with everything I had," he said quietly. "While sleeping in a bus terminal, trying to sell my dog to eat. So yeah, crayons weren't really the priority." Silence. Then a hush of respect. "You know, Jimmy," Stallone added, leaning in, "sometimes you crack jokes. Sometimes you crack dignity. Be careful which one you're breaking tonight." The audience felt it. This wasn't just talk show tension. This was a man defending his legacy. Jimmy leaned back, smiling tightly. "You should do stand-up, Sly. That comeback was almost intelligible." Stallone didn't miss a beat. "And you should try sincerity sometime. It might shock your audience." The crowd gasped, then roared. Jimmy pressed on. "Let's be honest. You've made more sequels than Hollywood has original ideas. Ever think of just letting it go?" Stallone crossed his legs slowly. "I keep telling stories people still want to hear," he said. "Maybe that's what bothers you." Jimmy chuckled dryly. "Or maybe it's that you keep playing the same guy with a new haircut." Stallone's gaze hardened. "Better than being a new haircut, with the same jokes." The room exploded with laughter and applause. Jimmy's smile faltered. "But seriously," he said, "isn't there part of you that worries people just see you as a punchline?" "Only when hosts like you try to write the jokes," Stallone said calmly. Rocky wasn't just a film. It was hope, for a lot of people who had none. Applause thundered again, this time deep and real. Jimmy forced a grin. "But you're a millionaire now, right? Isn't it a bit rich to talk about struggle?" Stallone's tone dropped, low and steady. "Struggle doesn't expire with a paycheck," he said. "It leaves scars. And it teaches you to recognize when someone's using you as their punchline." Jimmy went silent for a moment. "You think I'm using you?" Stallone didn't blink. "You tell me." The studio held its breath. Finally, Jimmy laughed, brittle. "Well, folks, didn't realize we booked a philosophy major tonight." Stallone smiled slightly. "Funny. I thought we booked a host." The crowd erupted. This time, not for Jimmy. What began as a comedy bit had turned into something unforgettable, a live fight for respect, and Stallone won it without throwing a single punch. Jimmy clenched his jaw. The game was slipping away and he knew it. The smirk was still there, but thinner now, forced. "So, Sly," he said, scrambling for footing, "how do you respond to critics who say your career's just nostalgia? That without the past, you're not much in the present?" Stallone's tone dropped a degree colder. "Critics talk. Legends work, and I don't need to relive the past," he said. "I built it." The pause that followed was electric. Then the audience erupted, loud, raw, and genuine. It wasn't just applause anymore. It was respect. Jimmy leaned forward, trying to regain control. "Come on, Sly, can't you take a joke?" Stallone's smile vanished. "Can you take the truth?" Silence. The kind that swallows a room whole. Jimmy turned stiffly to the camera, forcing a grin. "We'll be right back after this short break. Assuming Stallone doesn't punch me before then. But everyone watching knew this wasn't just a break. It was a battle line, and it was far from over." When the cameras came back, the lights blazed to life. Jimmy straightened his jacket, plastering on that polished grin again. "We're back with the one and only Sylvester Stallone," he announced. "Voice therapy. The man, the myth, the, what is it now, 80-something-year-old action figure." The audience laughed, but Stallone didn't flinch. "Better to be molded in stone than made of plastic, Jimmy." The crowd erupted, louder this time. There was a shift in the room, a divide Jimmy could feel. "Well," he said, pretending not to notice, "your fans are loyal, almost aggressively so, like they think you're still that scrappy underdog from Philly." "I am," Stallone said simply. "I just wear better shoes now," Jimmy scoffed. "Come on, Sly, haven't we moved past the underdog thing? Isn't it time to hang up the gloves, literally and metaphorically?" Stallone met his gaze without blinking. "You ever tell a soldier to hang up his boots because the war makes you uncomfortable?" Jimmy hesitated. "I don't think making Rocky IX qualifies as war." "It does," Stallone said. "Steady as stone, when you're fighting cynicism, apathy, and the belief that people like me can't still inspire." The audience burst into applause again, longer, deeper. Jimmy forced a smirk. "So what you're saying is, it's not ego, it's mission?" "No," Stallone said. "It's responsibility. To remind people you don't stop because the world tells you to. You stop when you decide you're done." Powerful words. Jimmy nodded, then quickly added, "Spoken like a man trying to sell a box office ticket." Stallone's eyes hardened. "You know, Jimmy, you keep trying to turn this into a punchline. Maybe because deep down, you're afraid someone might take me seriously." The crowd exploded. Jimmy leaned back, rattled now, his fake grin slipping. "You want to know what scares me, Sly?" he said, forcing composure. "That people think your on-screen persona is you. That Rocky is real." Stallone leaned in slowly. "Rocky is real. Not just because I wrote him, but because millions of people saw themselves in him. He's a mirror, Jimmy. Something you clearly avoid looking into." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was charged, electric. Everyone knew something was about to give. There comes a point when even the calmest man decides enough is enough, and when Sylvester Stallone stood up, the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Jimmy leaned back, trying to keep it light. "So, Sly, what's next? A line of anti-aging supplements? Maybe a reality show keeping up with the comebacks?" A few weak laughs scattered through the room. But the energy had changed. No one was buying the act anymore. Stallone exhaled slowly. "You know, Jimmy, it's funny. You sit in that chair and throw jokes like armor. But after a while, they stop being clever and start sounding like noise." Jimmy shrugged, feigning ease. "It's just TV, man. You know that." "Maybe that's the problem," Stallone said quietly. "You treat everything like a punchline. Even the people who come here with stories worth telling." A hush swept across the studio. Jimmy laughed nervously. "Don't be so sensitive, Sly. You've taken real punches. Surely you can take a few words." Stallone stood, slowly, calmly, and in that moment, no one doubted who the real heavyweight was. The audience gasped. "I've taken enough," Stallone said quietly. "And I've given enough to this industry, to this audience, to the spirit of what real storytelling is about." Jimmy stood too, forcing a smile, trying to regain control of the moment. "Hey, where are you going?" "We're not done here," Stallone turned toward the crowd. But I am. For a beat, silence. Then applause. Not polite, not nervous, real, from the gut. From people who understood exactly what they had just witnessed. Jimmy tried to laugh it off. Don't worry, folks. Next week, we'll have someone with a sense of humor. Stallone stopped at the edge of the stage. Next week, he said, try having someone with a soul. The room erupted again. He began to walk off, but paused just before the curtain. Turning back, his gaze swept the audience. Years of battles, comebacks, and quiet dignity alive behind his eyes. You know, he said slowly, voice steady, I've spent a lifetime building characters who fight for something. Maybe it's time late night did the same. He disappeared behind the curtain. The camera tried to follow, but cut awkwardly back to Jimmy, blinking, unsure how to recover. Backstage, a roaming camera caught Stallone striding past stunned crew members. Some clapped. Others nodded in quiet respect. A young intern whispered, "Thank you." Moments later, the internet detonated. Hashtags like Respect Stallone and Late Night Gone Wrong began trending worldwide. Memes flooded every feed. One still image of Stallone standing tall beneath studio lights. Captioned, "Strength isn't loud. It's dignified." Clips of the exchange dominated headlines. News outlets replayed the moment endlessly. Analysts debated it. Fans praised it. Even celebrities, actors, directors, athletes, chimed in with their support. Sylvester Stallone hadn't just walked out of a studio. He'd walked into history. What began as a simple late-night appearance became something much bigger, a raw, unscripted confrontation that stripped away the pretense and exposed something deeper. Not just egos, but values. He didn't storm out in anger. He walked out in dignity, and everyone watching, inside that studio and across the world, knew they had witnessed something real. Who was right? Who went too far? Tell us in the comments. And if you want more moments that pull back the curtain on Hollywood's most unforgettable encounters, subscribe now. This wasn't just another talk show episode. It was a turning point.